Welcome to Q&A practice. We'll start out with plaintiff attorney. Ready? Here we go. Mr. Bowe, how are you employed? Patrol Lieutenant with Calumet County Sheriff's Department. How long have you been so employed? 2 years, and prior to that rank. Could you tell the jury how you were employed before? I started with the Sheriff's Department as a jailer, became a patrolman, then a patrol lieutenant, patrol sergeant, and then a lieutenant. What are your duties now as a lieutenant? I supervise the patrol staff. Sometime after November 5th of 2005, did you become involved in the investigation that brings us here to court today? Yes, I did. When did you first become involved in that investigation? Sunday morning the 6th. And would you tell the jury how you first became involved? I was called Saturday night and asked to come to the scene to assist with taking control of the command post. What is a command post? It's a central location in a crime scene that we use for staging and arranging the things that we're going to carry out during the day. Are there duties, or were there, I should say, the week of the 5th through the 12th, were there duties in assuming responsibility for the command post that you performed? Yes, there were. And why don't we talk about just those duties? We'll talk more in just a few minutes, but talk about what those duties were. The main duty was scheduling and making sure that there was security around the land during the night hours. And during the day, there were also many large-scale searches that went on at the land or around the land, and we were given personnel to do that, and then we organized that. The Avery salvage property itself, that 40-acre parcel, were you one of the officers responsible for securing that area again between the 5th and 12th of November? Yes, I was. Describe for the jury, if you will, the security on the outside, that is the 40 acres. We're going to talk a little bit outside of that in just a minute, but let's first talk about the 40-acre area. Could you describe for the jury how that area was secured? We had an officer at the four corners of the property. One of the corners was the command post, so there were always several people in that position, and then we had an officer in the other three corners with a squad car. I'm showing you what's first been marked as exhibit number 79. Can you tell us what that is, please? This is an overview photo of a lot of the 40 acres. All right, I think we have a better way to show these today. I'm hoping at least, actually, officer, we're going to, because there's a couple of technical issues that we're going to do during the break. I'm just going to talk through this, and then after our morning break, we'll be able to look at some exhibits. You talked about the four corners, though, of the 40-acre land, and that you had people posted there. During what period of time were they posted, and was this a around the clock thing, or describe that for the jury? Most of the time it was around the clock. During the day when there were a large number of people in a certain area, we may use that security person to assist those people in the area because they really hadn't left that area anyway. At night, those people stayed in their positions through the entire night, and then if there was no activity in that area, they stayed in that position also. We have talked about the 40-acre property. Then let's go beyond that. Can you describe the area that surrounds the Avery land? To the north of the Avery land is State Highway 147. Running to the east of it would be Jam Creek Road, and to the west of it was County Q. The Avery land is south of 147, and there's a small dead-end road, Avery Road, that leads on to the 40 acres. Were you familiar that sometime after 10:30 in the morning on Saturday the 5th of November that law enforcement officers took control of the Avery land? Yes, they did. Was there a large law enforcement presence or security around set up outside of the 40 acres? Yes, there was. There was an officer at the intersection of 147 and Q. That when I arrived Sunday morning was in place. There was also an officer between that and Avery Road. There is a road that runs north off 147. There was an officer there keeping people from coming down onto 147, and then there was an officer at Jam Creek Road with the intersection of 47. There was also an officer at the end of Avery Road that was checking people in and out of the property. This responsibility for security, was that yours alone or was that shared? The security on the land was shared with Agent Sipple, so the jury knows who is Agent Sipple. He would be the dispatch agent for Calumet Sheriff's Department, works for Calumet, yes, County. At the scene, Agent Bowe. Who did that you take direction from? I took direction from Sheriff Page and Agent Wegg and Agent Fass, and Agent Wegg and Special Agent Fass. What was their role, if you know, at the scene? I believe they were lead agents. I know you talked about security or the outside security. Were you also involved in security within the 40 acres? I mean, not just the Four Corners, but also other security agents. No, if there was something specific, I would make plans to get people for them, but then they would place them where they needed them. You may not know this, Mr. Bowe, but how many law enforcement officers were involved in this search effort? Do you know total? Yes, I don't know. All right, other than security or other area, you talked about arranging some of the searches. Is that right? Yes. Which areas of searching did you have? Anytime there was a large-scale search, we arranged that. There were 2 large-scale searches inside the salvage yard, and there were 2 large-scale searches outside the property. There was also the Big O dive team was on scene, so we arranged that. Let's take them in reverse order, talking about the dive team. What was the dive team asked to do? The dive team was called in on Sunday the 6th and Monday the 7th. They were asked to dive any of the bodies of water. There were several gravel pits or stone quarries around the land, and there was water collecting in those, so they were asked to come in and search those areas. Do you know what they were searching for? Evidence, anything, a body, any property that may have belonged to Ms. Hall. All right, and what kind of, you talk about the outside property, what kind of acreage or area are we talking about? Inside the road that we were talking about, there's over 500 acres, and we did search outside that to some extent too, so were all 500 acres searched? There were just portions of it that were not searched. There were some wooded areas that were searched with dogs but didn't get the massive search that we did in some other areas other than the very wooded areas. Would you say the other or the balance of the 500 acres was searched? Yes. By law enforcement? Yes, it was. The arranging of these large-scale efforts, like the dive team that you mentioned, who would you directly speak with? Would it be the searchers, or was there someone else? What we would do is we would put someone from the sheriff's department, one of our deputies, with each group. We would break them down into 10-man groups. Let me stop you there. When you say our deputies, who are you talking about? Calumet Sheriff's Department. Go ahead. We would talk with our deputies which area we wanted to search if we were looking for anything in particular, and they would relay that to the people that were in their group. They would tell us when they were going out, when they were searching, and when they completed their search. So we talked directly with the Calumet officer that was with the team. You talked about the dive team. Let's talk about the search areas outside of the 40 acres I'm excluding the Avery Park property itself. And can you describe those large-scale searches for us, please? The most of that was either open field or quarries. What we would do is we would take a section of it and we would send our teams out to search that area. They would let us know when they were done, and then we would decide which other area to send them to. The dive team searched 4 ponds found around the Avery land on Sunday, and then on Monday they moved to another quarry that was south of Jam Creek Road, and they searched 2 large ponds there. Were the ponds left intact, or were the ponds disturbed at all due to the searches? The ponds that the dive team searched were left intact. Were there other ponds that were checked? There were. Tell us about that. There were 5 silt ponds that were located at RAD's main office for their quarry. They used those for washing rock. The water would run into one pond, and it would kind of go from pond to pond until it got to the last one, and most of the dirt would be gone, and they would pump it out and use it again. The dive team found that they couldn't dive those because there were too much sludge in them from the dirt they had washed off. So RAD agreed to dig 2 of those ponds out while we watched them do it. All right, I think I may have stopped you about the other property searches. You said that they were open field searches. Then you said the dive team, and I think that's where I stopped you. What other kind of searches were in the other areas? In the open field, there were also quarries. There's quarries all over in that area, so our teams would go from an open field, and then they would have to work their way into a quarry, and they would search the quarry. About half of them were inactive at the time, or even more, so they would cover that area. How many officers were involved in those large-scale searches, if you know? It varied by day. One day we had 60 troopers that were involved. On Sunday, when we did the first outside search, we had 30 officers along with 60 firemen. All right, so anywhere between 60 and 90 people searching at a time. Is that right? Yes. And again, for how many days did those searches occur? On 2 separate days, we searched the outside of the land, and on 2 days, we searched the interior of the land. All right, so 4 days total. When we came back from the break, we'll talk about the interior of the area, but is there anything that we have left out on the outside, any searches that you haven't described on the outside of the Avery land other than the searching with the dogs? On the first 3 days that I was involved, we had dogs on scene, so we would couple those up with CalMet officers and we would send them to different areas around the land and just have them run their dogs through the land. The most of what they ran through we searched by hand. Again, later were those the search and rescue dogs searching for evidence or searching for body or both? Searching for body. This might be a good time then for our morning break. Thank you. All right, members of the jury, we'll take our morning break at this time. We'll resume in 15 minutes. Again, do not discuss the case during the break. Counsel will resume then at 10:45. Thank you. Mr. Katz, you may continue your direct examination. Thank you. Sir, in front of you is Exhibit 79. Could you tell us what that is, please? This is an overhead photo of a partial view of the Avery land. All right, we will stop there. That will conclude our Q&A practice.